Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Finding Flow State podcast, where we are talking about attribution and AI. Should we move on to identity? Because that's one of the flagship parts of this episode.
Yeah, and we are ready to hear from Noah. Noah, we want to hear your voice. You've been quiet all episode. I know you think about identity a lot.
I mean, you all have really good points and interesting things to say. When it comes to identity, actually, I wanted to talk about WorldCoin. Isn't that around identity exactly? And here I hear it a lot recently. Like I'm just on some Discord channels, and it's like, oh, WorldCoin is pumping or whatever. And I just want to hear your opinion about it. Like, what do you think about a system that implements identity in that way? Like someone who recognizes your face and they have like your face on a database somewhere. I mean, I see the intention of it, but the implementation, what do you think about that?
For anyone who doesn't know, what WorldCoin is trying, I think they're just called World now, or something perhaps more pretentious. But what they're trying to do is bring digital identity to life. And they want it to be a sort of passport, proof of personhood is what I think they call it. So you can, whenever you need to prove you're a real person, which is more than you think you would, you can use this. And they rewarded people for signing up and going through proof of personhood. What it does is you have to go to something. It's all very Orwellian. It's very Black Mirror. If you have to go to something called an orb, and it's this big silver orb. It looks like an eye, and you have to stare into it, and it scans your iris.
Oh,
and
wow.
So basically, they developed this because the iris is it's a more reliable biometric marker of a person than their fingerprint. So they use the scan of your iris with this crazy tech, and then they assign it to your account when you've got a wallet and an on-chain address. And then you essentially have this digital passport, which you can use as proof of personhood whenever you need to prove that you're not AI, which is a topic we're definitely going to talk about next. But it's a bit creepy. So I signed up to do it. And they pulled all of their orbs out of the UK before I got to do it. And then I was speaking at NFT NYC in January, and I signed up to do it there. And then I just didn't get time to attend the appointment. But I'm considering doing it. However, to give full disclosure, they've been banned in a lot of countries because regulators don't like how they're handling this biometric data, which is about as sensitive. I mean, it's like if it's better than having a fingerprint, then it's more dangerous to have that out in the world than a fingerprint, probably. And also there was concerns over taking biometric data off of minors, plurals, and they also had consent withdrawal issues, which is just never a good sentence. So it's a very strange project, but it does solve some problems. However, before we came on air, Lane, you made a brilliant point about proving you're human versus proving you're not a computer. Please tell people that, because I think it's a great point.
Thank you for the segue, and thanks for bringing this up. It is definitely as important for, I think the first question is like, why do we need identity, right? Like, why do you need to know it's a person in that situation? And do you need to know that it's a person for sure? Or do you just need to know that it's not a computer? And sometimes you do need to know it's a person. I am very skeptical about solutions to that live on chain the way that we're talking about here, because that is just way too high a bar for sharing. Like, if we were to start to require identity for people to post to different social platforms because we wanted to know that they were real people actually writing these articles and not AI, a sort of logical extension a project like WorldCoin is starting to imply is that I would have to sign with my biometric data every single piece of content that I author. And I'm just not going to do that. Like, maybe some people will, and all the power to them, but I don't want to do that. I want people to know that someone wrote it and it's important that they know that it wasn't AI that wrote it, but maybe it's not important that they know that I wrote it if that saves me from having to put my iris scan beside content that I'm writing, because it's like, it's just too high a bar. I think if we were talking about an actual passport, and an because lots of passport programs around the world do use an iris scan already. Like if you want to get a visa in the UK, when I moved to the UK, when we got our visas there, they got iris scans. The UK government got iris scans from us because that was their national security policy. They have lots and lots of effort and energy and resources that go into securing that data, and it's really only used at the border. That's in the interest of a country's safety and whatever, and you're entering their country. I think that's a fine bar in that case, but having that be the bar when you're publishing a tweet, like, I want to know that a tweet's written by a human. I want to know it's not a computer, but I don't need my iris attached to it. Certainly not. And there are some smart things I think you can do around like zero knowledge signing and providing proofs without exposing private data and all that stuff. But the bottom line is, like, if you're solving the problem from prove you're a human, somewhere somebody's going to have a list of all the humans and all the data that maps to the people that are really humans. And that's definitely a very dangerous data set to have in existence, period. And so I think it's maybe a little bit more, for me, this is just kind of an interesting problem, but it's also a different way to look at it, to consider what would it take to just prove that it's not a computer. And so what identifiers can you, like, exploit the computers by all means. If you want to exploit very sensitive information about a computer that doesn't impact the safety and integrity of an actual human person, I think that is a much more manageable pill to swallow for a lot of people. And so it's like, absolutely, we should have protocols for ensuring that things aren't computers, and having little like CAPTCHA type solutions that's like, yeah, prove you're not a robot, but I don't have to give you an iris scan to solve a CAPTCHA. And I think we do need solutions that look more towards the direction of prove you're not a computer, not prove you are a human, because the difference between those two things, while subtle, really does have such huge implications for the individuals using the system. And I just don't think it's fair to ask anybody to exploit the most unique thing about them in order to access a system. Like, you should be able to access a community and resources and your own assets and your own reputation and a bustling economy without selling your basically selling your organs. That's kind of what we're implying with putting your irises next to your participation in an economic system. And it's like, there's just absolutely no way we should ever be requiring people's physical anything for them to participate. Like, that's just a very problematic line of thinking to go down, I think. And so if instead it's ensure that the thing is not a computer, hopefully we'll get answers that hold computers accountable, and they exclude bots. The effort is put into excluding bots and excluding the tools that are taking advantage of systems meant for humans, but not ones that are exploiting humans based on physical attributes.
Yeah.
Was that what we were talking about before, or did I take that on a different direction?
No, that's exactly what we're talking about. And I think perhaps people might not appreciate how big a problem this is becoming, proving you're not a computer. So I've worked as an editor for a major website. We had 80 writers working under us just as ChatGPT was starting to get, big. And loads of them started using it. Even today, people use ChatGPT to write articles for them. And I think this problem annoys me in two different directions. Firstly, they were trying to scam money out of me by not doing the work. And it's really obvious at the moment. It's really obvious when something is written by AI. To me, I read content and write content constantly. I can spot the markers. But it's true that that's not going to be the case forever. AI is improving at lightning pace. So it will overtake that human detection. But then the other side of the problem, I think, is I don't want to read AI content. It's kind of a philosophical point, but I don't want to read AI content. If I saw an article, no matter how interesting, if I saw an article with an opinion that wasn't linked back to a person, I'm not really interested in reading it. And it's the same with music. I think we'd lose something if a human didn't create it, as catchy as a song could be from AI, and it will happen. It's probably already happened. I think we lose something by not having linked to a person. And the power of AI and the prevalence of AI is creating a problem very, very quickly, where the amount of AI content is the amount of new AI content has got to have already outpaced the amount of new human-made content.
Yeah.
It's moving that quickly, and so the obvious solution is proof of personhood. That's the route one. I agree. I completely agree with you. Even though I have signed up to scan my eye, although I've not managed to do it yet, I completely agree. It is a violation to have to do that, even with zero knowledge proofs or whatever, which I do think solve some of it, but it kind of moves the problem rather than solves it. Yeah,
I think
it is a big problem. Sorry, go on.
well, you actually alluded to probably the most pragmatic solution we'll have available to us. And you said it's obvious. You said, I can tell it's AI content when I review it. It's obvious to me because I'm an expert. And that notion of expert review and having you can imagine there's an account that's associated with a professor of the topic of interest, an editor of a publication that's related to that, and a journalist like you, Rob, who also is considered a credible individual. And you guys create specific accounts that are like, these are our public accounts. I am Rob Beggs. I work for this organization, and I will stake my reputation on reviewing things and signing them and saying that I reviewed them. And I attest to there being a material amount. I think increasingly it's hard to argue that AI is involved in all the content we write because we install the Grammarly plugin, and it checks our grammar, and in music, people have been using autotune for a long time. But I think you're right that the substance needs to come from people, and the substance needs to really have been verified that it matches sort of the academic standards in that area of that day. And so having content that is sort of unverified, where it's like, no, there's no proof that it's a person or a computer. This is just content that's unverified, but then having it go through the process of being reviewed by experts and signed by different people who have associated their publicly reputable accounts without any biometric data associated to them, but it's an account that you work out of often enough that people are like, oh, we know that's Obama's account because he said so on Oprah, and he uses it all the time for these things. There's sort of a certain level of account that is public facing, and you can have your credentials that we would normally expect associated with it. And if those accounts start signing off on things and say, not so much proof of personhood, but proof of person review or academic review, then you can at least start to filter out the quality. And I think that gets you much further to solving the real problem we want to solve, which is having high quality content that we know is factual and accurate and has been contributed to primarily by a person who's an expert in that field and will get compensated for it. We can get 99% of the way there with human reviewers and a history of that review process that people can observe and maybe attest to themselves. That doesn't have anything to do with ever requiring somebody to put their actual literal fingerprint on it, which you just wouldn't want to be in the public in general, probably.
Ironically, though, wouldn't AI be better suited to review whether something's AI or not?
I think Noah should answer this one because he actually worked on an AI tool that reviewed AI content. I think, didn't you, sir?
I mean, yeah, you got a point. There's definitely the algorithm just reaches a point where it's just indistinguishable from real AI. But at least I think, I don't know how that translating into different arts, like for example an image, like a generated image. Yeah, we are almost there at the point where you can't tell the difference. Well, probably not with real people, right? With real people you also have this glitch around the fingers or whatever, but with digital art, for example, you can tell if it's really AI or not unless you use an AI detector machine or application, right? When it comes to writing, I think it is more possible for an expert to be able to spot it because writing has a lot of human touch, right? You have your style, you have your humor, you have a little bit of your personality that you put into your writing. I mean, at least I think most people should do that, and maybe those will be able to spot on a written documentation or whatever it is. Maybe I've been wrong. Maybe AI gets to a point where they are geniuses and can write a super poem or whatever. But I think it depends on the content, right? Is it easier to spot an AI generated digital art image, or is it easier to spot are writing.
I think, well, this is how I've imagined it. Is so I've written at least 10,000 words a week for a decade, and if I got that body of writing right, and I gave that to AI to just comb through, then I find it hard to believe that AI couldn't write in my voice.
Right.
Just from with that data set, surely it'd be able to write from my voice, and then I think it'd get to the point where I really think it's going to get to the point where I wouldn't even be able to tell whether I wrote it or AI wrote it using my voice.
I feel like that's touching more on the base of using AI as a complement, like as a tool to support yourself and your own expression. Like if I have a model that is constantly, if I have had 10 years of experience writing and suddenly I have a model that also is aware of all of this and I can say, okay, maybe write this article. I mean, I see your point. I see your point. Maybe some people, I think this is a dilemma because if the AI model is modeled after you and with your own themes and you are the one deciding, the prompts and kind of architecting the result of the AI, is that really AI generated? Or are you just using AI as a tool to redefine or express yourself?
Can I answer that?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I don't think that's much different to what AI does anyway, right? If so, for example, if I ask AI to summarize a topic, it's going to go to trusted sources. So it always goes to the same places. If you type in, for example, if you ask something about crypto, it will go to Cointelegraph, CoinDesk, Wikipedia. It has like a 5, 6 places it will go. So it's pulling information from the same sort of sources all the time. All I would be doing is narrowing that down a little bit further. So to me, it feels like just kind of a slightly more distilled version of the same problem. But
Right.
yeah,
I guess
I
I
don't know.
guess I guess that I imagine it more like a very very tune in for you, not something that is just getting everything out of the internet and trying to solve like because they are working on models that are very personalized. Like, the projects of people work let's say you want to have your own model generator AI. You want to fill it with data about plants and it doesn't have any data about anything else and it's not gonna get it from the internet if you don't want to. So you're teaching your own model. And so I guess in my mind, if someone teaches a model that is exclusively about them and I don't know, I think it's kind of complicated.
We're definitely way down the rabbit hole now. I actually still go back to the same thing about like the important thing being who signed it, who looked at it. Like I think it's completely reasonable to believe that you could feed all Rob's work into something and say, write an article like this about this in Rob's style. And if you didn't know any better, maybe you couldn't distinguish those things. And as a reader, the only thing that I would want to do as a follower of Rob's content is know that Rob reviewed one and signed it. And so knowing which version of the content was signed by Rob, that's the version that I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at the one that his account signed and I know therefore like reviewed it and attested to it or whatever. And just that ability to have your account show that it exists over time, have that account sign things as an act of attestation. I think that does get you a very far way because yes, definitely content can be created that looks just like Rob's and you wouldn't be able to distinguish it. And in that moment, really the thing that matters is, well, what's Rob going to say about it? And what Rob's going to say is that I back the one that I signed. And if there no versions of those have been signed by Rob, then we don't trust any of them. And so if the content that gets filtered out is the stuff that hasn't been signed by an account that has any reputation associated with it, you naturally have the stuff that's been reviewed by humans, supported by humans, addressed by humans, rising to the top, and all the other generated crap, basically, for lack of a better term, can just fall through the sifter because it hasn't been signed. And if nobody signs it, then we just don't believe it. It can live wherever it wants. You can put it on a blockchain. But if there isn't a reputable account that has taken a look at it and said, yeah, I reviewed this and I think it's legit, then we just don't believe it. And I think some people really will make jobs out of going to the trouble of building up their journalistic integrity on the blockchain and then going through and finding good content and doing the human sanity check of like, yeah, actually this AI generated article is fine and is insightful and is helpful and I'll sign it so it gets to the top of people's feeds. And that might be fine. The problem is mostly when we have AI content that looks real and makes very persuasive arguments about things that are not true. And I don't know if either of you have ever had this experience with something with like ChatGPT or anything, but you can basically prompt it to say anything. And and it will come up with a case that's very compelling for that thesis that's not true. Like it will defy the laws of physics and make up new facts to support its own thesis before it will sort of tell you that it's done that. And so I think like really the human value is just the sanity check of like, does this fit the natural known laws that the rest of us are ascribing to?
Yeah, I like that. That is the beauty of attribution in a nutshell.
Yeah, it really is. That is the beauty of attribution. That you get all of that just out of the power of being able to sign content and know which account signed it, basically. And so it is really a very, very powerful feature, even in the face of super complex tech like AI.
Yeah, and this problem is just getting started. It's going to just grow exponentially for who knows how long. So blockchain is a solution to a problem that people aren't even really aware is a problem yet.
Definitely. It sounds like we brought the whole conversation full circle.
It does. We're pros.
Yeah.
Well done, everybody. And so we do have a way for folks to explore this topic this week. I was putting a little something together, an example to work through. Can you just give us a high level talk through of what folks are working on this week, Noah, before we sign off?
Sure. I think it probably will pair with the previous assignment around just creating your account and knowing at least the basic of how to access the coin, the money on your account. And so on top of that, I wanted to show an example of how to interact with your accounts with things that didn't have to do with money necessarily, not with fungible tokens or NFTs. Just using your account on the blockchain for daily mundane stuff like creating a shopping list or creating like a budget list and have some time-based lock mechanisms on maybe a savings account. I know that those have to do with fungible tokens, but it's just that's the kind of like the direction that I wanted to go with it. It's just use blockchain for everyday stuff and in a simple way. So yeah, that's basically adding metadata to your account and managing it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That is all we have for this week. Thanks so much for joining us, folks. Until next week. All right.